Welcome back everyone. Channel regulars will know that we have become fully immersed in Final Girl this year, and are currently halfway through our series of videos reviewing each of the Series 1 feature film boxes. This series assumes that you are selecting and purchasing feature films one at a time, which is often how you'll see this game sold at independent retailers. However, there are many ways of collecting Final Girl, and as part of the Series 3 Kickstarter, we took a plunge on another, the Series Ultimate Boxes. These boxes collate a whole series of Final Girl, including all of its bonus content, into one neat package, albeit one that will definitely leave a hole in your board game budget. Having just received our Series 2 Ultimate box, we thought it would be interesting to go through the contents and discuss what this approach adds to your Final Girl experience, and whether it is worth purchasing such a large amount of Final Girl in one go. But first, a reminder of our promise to you. We take our position as an independent reviewer of board games very seriously, and so we'll always be upfront with you about whether we are or have ever been in a commercial relationship with the company that produces the games we review and unbox. We are big fans of the Final Girl game, but we have no contact with Van Ryder Games and have obtained this Ultimate box through the Series 3 Kickstarter like many other backers. You can be assured, therefore, that what you see here is representative of what you might if you were to buy the product yourself, and that the opinions I convey in this video are mine alone. Let's get into it. You can see upon opening the Ultimate box that the heart of its contents are the 5 feature film sets that make up Series 2, namely Into the Void, Panic at Station 2891, A Knock at the Door, Once Upon a Full Moon, and Madness in the Dark. This Ultimate box doesn't come with a core set which is required to make use of any of its contents, assuming instead that this is at least your second venture into the game and that you will already own one. However, the contents of other Ultimate boxes, and other configurations of them, do vary a little, and it is worth studying the content list to make sure you are buying what you think you are buying. In addition, there are 4 other sub-boxes within the Ultimate box providing additional content, which we'll go through in turn. I should also note, to avoid confusion, that each of these boxes, including the feature films, arrived individually factory sealed within the overall Ultimate box. We removed this just prior to filming, just to avoid the ridiculous amount of camera glare, but have otherwise not touched the contents of the boxes prior to filming, so everything is still as it was delivered. The Cast and Crew box is where you will find the Terror from the Grave vignette expansion. This contains no new location, so needs to be combined with another feature film in order to play, but swaps out the killer for a new type of enemy, in this case the zombies. Inside you'll find the usual set of rules explaining how this will work and your objectives for the game. There are also a number of tokens, principally to represent the zombies themselves, although as the miniatures are included in the Ultimate box you will likely choose to use these instead, and a number of additional cards. There are vehicle action cards specifically for use with this expansion, the purpose of which I won't spoil. You also have a number of terror cards for the zombies, just as you would for any other killer, ready to be combined randomly with the location's terror cards at the start of the game. New Final Girl Patsy rounds out the roster for this series, and lastly we have the finale cards and dark power cards for the zombies, just like any other killer, and again, I won't spoil the surprise of all of these, but just show one of each as an example. The Cast and Crew box also contains the many zombie miniatures to accompany this expansion, including single zombie miniatures and hordes represented by small mobs of zombies which play differing roles in the scenario. This box is also where your 5 miniatures of all the Final Girls from this season, all neatly contained in their own slot within this plastic tray to keep them safe and organised. I've got an upcoming painting video where I'll talk about this in more detail, but it's worth saying that even for miniatures, those in the Final Girl range are tiny. They have to be, of course, to be usable at the scale of the various location maps, but it still may surprise those that are used to miniatures from other games, and certainly makes them feel quite delicate. That said, they managed to retain a surprising amount of detail for what are still board game pieces after all, and they will take miniature paints very nicely. Maybe just invest in a magnifying glass. There is space underneath this tray of Final Girl miniatures for the storage of Final Girl cards and their secret items, allowing you to create a specific repository for your Final Girls, which can be used for any killer location combos you choose, rather than leaving them within the individual feature film boxes. You may be wondering where the killer miniatures are in this. I won't be going through each feature film within the box in detail, as they will likely be the subject of their own expansion reviews at some point, and I want to focus on what you get from an Ultimate box that you wouldn't get from buying these feature films individually. However, there is one key difference content-wise for the films in the Ultimate box, and that is that your killer miniatures are already lovingly stuffed inside the relevant plastic tray, ready to use whenever you select that killer. Those familiar with the game will already know that these feature film boxes are double-sided, with one side holding components for the killer and the other holding components for the location, allowing you to mix and match these if, for example, you really want the Evermorph to turn up in an Arctic setting. The location side of each feature film in the Ultimate Box also contains the vehicle miniature associated with that location, such as the Superloader in the Into the Void set. Again, neither the killer miniature nor the vehicle miniature would normally be included if you bought the feature films separately. You would have to buy the relevant miniature expansions. They've simply been packaged this way in the Ultimate Box for convenience. Personally, I would have preferred all the miniatures to have the same storage treatment as the Final Girls, which are somewhat protected from bouncing around by their individual slots in the tray, but this is really only an issue if you plan to paint the miniatures and wish to protect them thereafter. Let's move on to the purple bonus features box. The first thing you'll notice is that this slim volume has some decent heft to it, and opening it up you'll see why. This box contains purely additional paper content for the game. First you'll find the Series 2 feature film rulebook, which collates the individual rule sheets you'll find in each feature film within Series 2, just in a larger format in a single book. From my perspective, a very useful reference guide, but your mileage may vary. Each setting and villain also comes with their own list of achievements, little extra challenges to tick off as you complete the set, some of which encourage you to mix the settings and villains in different configurations. It's a nice extra touch, nothing to take too seriously, but potentially something to spice up your games once you've defeated the feature films for the first time. The next booklet is the Lore and Scenario booklet for Series 2. I won't show every page of this for obvious reasons, but we'll use the Evermorph section as an example. Each killer gets a little bit of background context about where they came from or how the situation in the feature film arose. Then follows 5 scenarios, placing the killer in each of the 5 locations from the series with certain elements predetermined. For example, it might tell you to use specific tarot cards rather than the random draw, which final girl to use, which setup, etc. The book recommends playing the 5 scenarios in order to form an overarching storyline, but they can also be played individually and are another way of changing up the game. At the end of the book, you'll get a bit of background on each final girl and some tips on how to play them to their best advantage. Lastly, we have the books of gruesome deaths. Again, we won't spoil all of this, but we'll use the USS Conrad book as an example. These books provide narrative descriptions of the deaths of victims during your game. Essentially, you select whichever book matches your game setting, and then each time a victim is killed, look up the specific passage to describe their fate based on the circumstances that resulted in their death. Common situations, such as the killer's standard action, have multiple passages, and you perform a dice roll to determine which applies. As you can see, each setting from Series 2 has its own booklet, and each of these contains deaths for all the possible killers from Series 2, including Terror from the Grave. They don't retrospectively add deaths for Series 1 killers that might find their way into Series 2 settings, but I can understand why that might become an increasingly unfeasible approach over time. You're certainly not going to hear me complain about this massive injection of narrative content. Whilst I've yet to try these out, I've already gushed about the similar death books from Themeborn's Escape the Dark series, and these offer even more utility as you'll be opening them every time a victim dies, which if your strategies in this game are as questionable as mine, means these books will get a lot of use. Overall, if you play the game a lot, this box contains a lot of additional content and ways to expand your games, but it's worth asking yourself whether or not these features are likely to get used based on the way you enjoy the game. The box of props provides a number of upgrades, alternative mechanics and additions, none of which particularly relate to one another, but all of which can be mixed into your games of Final Girl as and when you choose. Much of the box is taken up with the ultimate dice and their associated card, which act as an alternative to your Final Girl's ultimate ability. If you choose, when you reach the appropriate moment in the game, you can decide not to activate the ultimate ability of your Final Girl in exchange for gaining access to a single ultimate die. Which die you can choose from depends on the number of victims you have saved to that point. For example, Patsy requires 5 victims to activate her ability, and doing so will therefore allow her to choose from Tier 1 or Tier 2 as indicated on the ultimate die card. You could wait until you have saved additional victims in order to choose a die from a higher tier if so desired, but once you have chosen, that will remain your die for the rest of the game. Ultimate dice are rolled at the same time as the normal red dice for a relevant action. For example, if you chose the ultimate health die, you would roll it when you play action cards that convey health, such as long rest and short rest, adding additional health for each chart showing when you have rolled. Each of the 6 possible dice has a different effect, and it's worth considering the probability of success on the dice when making your choice, as they do not all have the same number of blank faces, meaning some will provide a more consistent bonus than others. I've yet to use the ultimate dice, but to be honest I have some reservations. It seems a shame to remove the ultimate abilities of a final girl when these abilities are often their most characterful feature. It seems like this option works best when your final girl is ill suited to a particular combination of setting and villain, but then why not just use a different final girl? I'd welcome your thoughts on the ultimate dice and indeed any other of the components in the ultimate box in the comments section if you have different opinions. Eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed a 7th die amongst the ultimate dice, and this is the Desperation die. The instructions emphasise that this is a die to be used only in the most dire of circumstances. When you most need to succeed, you can replace one of the normal red dice with the Desperation die for a single roll. 5 sides of this die show a star, adding a single success to your overall roll. However, the 6th side will result in you immediately losing the game. Even in such an hour of need, losing the whole game because of a single result on a single die doesn't seem like it would be a particularly satisfying ending. Perhaps this thought occurred to Van Ryder Games as well, as they have also supplied a Book of Desperate Deaths, giving a final paragraph of narrative to round out any game where the Desperation die kills you, specifically based on the action that you were taking at the time. I won't spoil the specific text of the book, but I just want to take a moment to express my appreciation of the way each of these endings uses the premise of the action card you used ironically becoming the source of your doom. Well played, Van Ryder Games, well played. The signature action cards are probably more likely to find their way into my games, being both simpler to implement and adding a nice dose of additional flavour. At the start of each game, you may choose or select at random just one of these cards to add to the available action cards of your game, representing a special skill of sorts that your final girl possesses. These cards otherwise function like any other action card in the game. They include some new reaction cards such as Dodge and Ambush, along with such evocative cards as Intimidate, Scavenge and Parkour. A genuinely pleasant addition to the game, some of these cards are such a good fit to the core game that you'll wonder why they weren't already included, and I can pay them no higher compliment. The box of props also adds 4 new final girls that you can select for any of your games. I gather that Constance and Julia are crossover characters from the game The Dark Quarter, not a game I know much about, but let us know if you think we should check it out, which explains their slightly different art style. Julia in particular certainly intrigues me, being to my knowledge the first final girl to require only a single victim save to unlock her ultimate ability. Agnes and Layla meanwhile have ultimate abilities specifically designed to interact with some of the new mechanics in the box of props, and therefore won't be an obvious choice for games where these elements are not in play. Last but not least, the box of props adds a number of component upgrades for your core set. The value of these is a little mixed for me. The horror track marker is certainly evocative, but I don't necessarily feel it has a big advantage over the original red meeple. It's of course personal preference, but I would never trade the original time marker for the so-called deluxe plastic version. I prefer the feel of it and the top-down view, which just isn't possible with this new alternative that would roll away at the slightest encouragement if you put it on its side. That said, I love the new Bloodlust marker, which fits perfectly with the other wooden components from the core set, but is in a much more thematic blood splatter pattern. By far my favourite of these upgraded components are the new final health tokens, notably the only upgrade that replaces a cardboard component from the original box. Chunkier, easier to shuffle, nicer in the hand. I happen to have had a set of these for some time, and I've never missed their cardboard counterparts. Possibly the most visible extra of those in the series box is the game mat box, specifically designed to look like a VCR player. That's an archaic form of multimedia playback for those of you that were born after the turn of the millennium. The game mat inside is split into 2 halves, one including space for the Bloodlust track, action cards, Terror deck and the final girl, whilst the other is dominated by spaces for the location and killer. It feels quite the luxury to have a pre-arranged layout for your games, though the mats total a space of 28 inches by 24 inches, so you'll need a decent amount of space to lay them out. The mats also assume that you will want to see everything for the game all the time, in particular having full visibility of all the action cards even between turns, whereas I tend to put the available action cards to one side once I've completed the preparation phase to reduce the space needed for the game. That said, I'm sure I'll not be able to resist the theatre of having these mats in the game at some point. I just think it's worth considering whether the reduction in game portability suits your particular gameplay style. When it comes to the value of the Series 2 Ultimate Box, really this comes down to your personal approach to the game. Van Ryder Games market the Ultimate Box as a massive discount compared to picking up all of the individual components, but this assumes that you would otherwise pay full retail price. The reality is that independent retailers often offer discounts on feature films, and the extra boxes of miniatures can often be found available on sale. I'm not saying the Ultimate Box isn't a saving, but I'm confident that over a period of time, I could shave enough off the RRP of its components to make the difference a lot smaller than the retail prices imply. All of this is to say that if you want every component in the series and you know you'll get good use out of having the full set straight away, then on a strict cost basis the Ultimate Box makes sense. But that isn't going to be how the majority of players experience this game. With most if not all of the contents available for individual sale, you could quite happily build your collection over time, use it bit by bit and never feel like you missed out. But look, let me take my sensible hat off for a moment, because I clearly bought this box. And am I disappointed with it? Of course not. I don't need this box, the way I don't need a special collector's edition Blu-ray of my favourite film. I know I won't get to all of these extras and play through all of these scenarios anytime soon, perhaps never. That's not the point of a box like this. It's an indulgence, a treasure chest of little extras and quality of life improvements. There is a joy to simply owning the complete set of a favourite game, regardless of how often such components get to the table in reality. So my honest opinion is this: know yourself. If having looked at all that it adds, you know that it will bring you joy, and it's a luxury that you can afford, then you shouldn't feel bad for choosing this product to throw some disposable cash at. It's not a poor value option or a waste of money. But think about it carefully, be honest with yourself about what value this set holds for you, because it certainly isn't an essential purchase and you can definitely get the full Final Girl experience without it. I hope this unboxing has been helpful. If you own this set or the other series Ultimate Boxes, don't forget to help the community by giving your own perspectives in the comments. As for what's next, we're keen to keep making more Final Girl content, but we need to know that's what our viewers want. The best way to show us that is to share this video with your fellow players or to subscribe. It really helps us plan and supports our small channel. Ultimately, I think I've said the word ultimate quite enough times for one day, so let me get back to preparing our next video just as soon as I've encouraged you to work hard, play better, and take care out there.